Up YouTube, Ronix with it another tutorial, and in this very tutorial I want to show you guys how I'm going to be editing my old image. I took this image I think a year ago, and I want to try and see how I'm going to edit and color grade this very image so that I can see how far I've come with my skin retouching skills or my skin retouching technique. So I'm going to first of all show you guys what I basically did for this very image. So what I did, I first of all did adjustments on the raw image. So what I basically did, I came to my highlights, I put them all the way down, and also my whites. Then I pulled up my shadows and my blacks to get back most of the detail in the image. So remember, the image was basically like this. Then what I did was this. Then I came down to my levels and I pulled in my blacks and my whites too. Then what I did after that, I tried to balance the skin tones and color grade this image even more. So I basically came right here and I right clicked and I created a new field adjustment layer. This is what I'm talking about. So what I did in there, the image got to look like this. Let me show you what I did for that new adjustment layer. I came all the way down to this color editor and I selected skin tone. Then I got my color picker tool and sampled the skin area. And after sampling the skin area, I came and moved the uniformity slider to around 79 and the saturation to 28. So basically that is what I did. So since we had greens in this image initially, I felt like the background was slightly distracting me. So what I had to do, I came to my basic and a color editor and I desaturated my greens and I turned up the hues. Then I also pulled up my lightness. So basically that is what I did, and this image is ready to be exported into Photoshop for further skin retouching. I'm basically going to come right here to image and I'm going to come to edit with and edit in Photoshop, and I'm going to be using a TIFF, not a PSD. So it doesn't matter, basically whichever you're comfortable with, that is what you have to go in for. I'm going to go to edit and the image is going to be exported into my Photoshop interface, and in a few it is going to be in Photoshop, and in Photoshop we're going to be doing color grading for this very image. So here we are right now in the magical world of Photoshop. So I want to start retouching this image, and before I can do any retouching, I'm going first of all crop this image in a ratio of 45 or 4:5 ratio. So I'm going to slightly crop in this image. So the reason as to why I usually crop my images in that ratio is because I want the image to fit in the whole screen. When someone is viewing my image or my images posted on Instagram, so I'm going to hit enter, and here we are right now. So first things first, I usually love to clean up my images before doing any retouching on them. So I'm going to duplicate the background by hitting Ctrl or Command J, then come and get my spot healing brush tool, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make sure it is, you can either sample all layers if at all you have a blank new layer, but this is more of a new or duplicate of the background, so I'm not going to check this. And I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to start removing the skin imperfections or the blemishes from this very image. I think I should slightly increase on the brightness of my screen. So let me just clean up this and I'll be done in a minute. So remember, you always take your time while cleaning up or removing blemishes from your images, because this is going to contribute a biggest percentage to your overall retouched image. So make sure you take your time when trying to clean up your images before or after or during skin retouching. So remember, this is more of a beauty portrait, and the makeup wasn't that much, so we just want to get the best out of it, and we see how far it can be taken and the results we may be able to achieve from this image anyway. So let me just clean up the forehead and we shall be good to go for the retouching of this very image. So I think we are almost done cleaning up this image or removing those blemishes or skin imperfections. So let me see what I've done so far. So the before after. So I think that is good. So what I would love to do, I'm going to duplicate this layer. Remember, I just want 2 layers for my frequency separation. I'm going to hit Command J. And I'm going to name this low, and I'm going to name the upper layer high. And as you know, the low frequency is containing the colors and the skin tones, and the high frequency is containing the textures and the outlines of the image. So I'm going to select the low frequency and I'm going to turn off the visibility of the high frequency layer. So after selecting the low frequency layer, I'm going to simply come to filter, blur, and come to Gaussian blur. So for this step, basically you have to, first of all, I'm going to move this all the way down, look for the area that seems to have more textures than the rest of the skin, and for this case I'm going to zoom in. So I think I have more textures right here and they are prominent, so I just want to blur out or remove textures from this very area until they completely start disappearing and become invisible and remain with only the colors and the skin tones right there. So I'm going to simply move this radius until they start disappearing completely into the image. So I'm going to go with at around 8. I've completely lost out on the textures from this image, and I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that the image has turned out to look a little bit blurry, and that shouldn't be your worry. So come and select the high frequency layer and activate it or turn it on. Then come to, remember this is a 16-bit image, as you can see the figure right here. And for 16-bit images, the settings for frequency separation usually differ from an 8-bit image. So you always have to consider this, because if at all you alter or use a different method of frequency separation, it is not going to enable you maybe achieve the best out of your skin retouching. So basically, I'm going to come to image and I'm going to come to apply image, and if at all you have a 16-bit image, just simply come and select the low frequency layer. And now what you're going to do, basically you're going to come right to the blending mode and change it to add. And when you change it to add, make sure the scale is 2, opacity 100, offset 0, and for a 16-bit image you have to invert, and your textures are going to be embedded on this gray kind of layer. But if at all you have an 8-bit image, select the low frequency layer, because that's why we're going to be subtracting the textures from, and change the blending mode from add or from normal to subtract. The scale is going to be 2, offset 128, and make sure invert is not checked. So that is it for that. But since we have a 16-bit image, I'm going to select the low frequency layer, change the blending mode to add, scale is 2, offset 0, and check or mark invert. And now you see that the textures are on this gray kind of layer, and I'm going to hit OK. And after doing so, I'm going to basically, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to the blending mode and change it from normal to linear light. I'm sorry if I told you guys can hear some noise in my background. We are having some fighter jets passing, and I don't know if I'm safe. So I'm going to hit or select both layers and hit Ctrl or Command G, and I'm going to name this group frequency separation, like that. So when I turn this on and off, you can see no difference between the image and the frequency separation group. So I'm going to open this and I'm going to select the low frequency layer, and before I can select the low frequency layer, what I'm basically going to do, I'm going to come right here to my high frequency layer, and I'm going to create a black and white adjustment layer on top of the high frequency layer. The reason for doing that is because I want to see where the skin tones are not blending evenly, and I'm going to blend them. Remember, skin retouching is more of evening out or blending the skin tones of a given image. So since skin tones are embedded in the low frequency layer, I'm going to come and select the low frequency layer and come under the brushes, right click and select my mixer brush tool. Make sure it is a clean brush. So we have two options right here. Select the second option because we want the brush to be cleaned automatically when you are trying to blend or even out the skin tones. Whiteness is 9, load 75, mix 90, and the flow 100%, and make sure sample alias is not checked or marked. And after doing so, you can simply come and zoom into your image and now start blending and harmonizing. And when you're harmonizing, make sure you harmonize or blend the skin tones in a way that you're blending the midtones alone, the highlights alone, and the shadows alone in the image to create that nice and smooth transition within the skin tones of the image. So I'm basically going to do that in a bit. So let me start harmonizing or blending the skin tones. Remember, skin retouching is more about harmonizing or blending the skin tones in the image. So just come and start blending and harmonizing, and you can either decrease or increase on the size of your mixer brush tool by using the brackets right after the key, like P for purple on the keyboard. So basically just do that and blend or even out the skin tones in the image. So we are just using the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the skin tones. Remember, the mixer brush tool is really powerful in cases whereby the makeup wasn't all that good and it wasn't blended into the skin of the model. So just get the mixer brush tool until it will kind of save your day if at all you were worried about how you're going to edit that makeup that wasn't blended quite well into the image. So just come and harmonize and blend or basically even out on the skin tones of the image. So come, I'm basically trying to harmonize or blend those tones in the image. So I'm going to turn off the black and white and show you guys the before and after. So this is the before after. You can see the progress so far, and it is really good, and we are having the best out of this image. I'm going to turn back the black and white and make sure I'm still selected on the low frequency layer, and I'm going to simply blend or harmonize those transitions between the skin tones of this very image. You can see what I'm doing and how I'm doing this. I'm basically trying to blend the midtones alone, the shadows alone, and the highlights. So you can say I have some kind of shadows, I'm blending them alone. Then this highlight, I'm also going to blend it too alone, I should say. Then I'm going to blend this other side like that and harmonize those colors right on the nose area so that we can have a nice transition in the colors of the image. So let's just blend this. And when you're blending, make sure you don't over zoom in because you're not going to be seeing the effect of your mixer brush tool. For example, when you zoomed into such a resolution like that or such a zoomed out pace. So let's just try to blend or harmonize these skin tones using our lovely mixer brush tool in Photoshop. I hope you guys are learning something. I know I always do so many tutorials because I want to impact and help you guys or someone or a beginner out there who doesn't know anything about skin retouching, and that's why I usually don't forward anything. So let's turn off the black and white to see the progress so far. This is the before after, I hope you're really loving this very image, and you're going to continue blending. For example, the neck area and the hands. Remember, skin retouching is, when we are doing skin retouching, we aim at retouching the overall image and not retouching the face, because even the other parts of the image are part of it. And remember, when you're doing skin retouching, you can as well fix maybe the clothing, or maybe remove some distractions from the image so that you can have more emphasis onto the model or the subject you're trying to retouch. So basically, skin retouching is not more about only the skin, but is more of bringing out that kind of beauty out of the images we are or will be retouching. So let's just blend this. I think I'm doing so much of the talking, and let me just concentrate on the retouching of this image. Increase on the size. I'm going to blend this other hand like that. So just come and harmonize and blend the image so that you can have nice transitions within the skin tones. And at the end of the day, people are going to judge you by how careful you are when you're doing your retouching. And I think I'm going to also post this image so that you guys can look at every single detail of this image, because YouTube tends to compress the videos and you won't be seeing the things in real time. So I'm going to turn this off so that you can see the progress so far. This is the before after. I'm going to zoom in slightly and I'm going to blend this area without my black and white layer. So you can as well blend the skin tones without the help of the black and white layer, if at all you do trust your site. Anyway, so let me just do this. So let's see what you have done so far, before, after, and you can see what the Mr. Brush tool has just done to the image. I'm going to come and select the Lasso tool, and I'm going to select the black and white and delete it. Select the low frequency layer, and after getting the Lasso tool, make sure feathering is around 22 pixels and alias is checked or marked, and I'm going to zoom in now all the way, and I'm going to select like this. So make sure you make a selection onto the skin area of the model, and you should not select maybe the outlines or the clothing of the model. Then come to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So it is going to bring back the radius we had when we are doing our frequency separation group or separating the frequencies of the image. I'm going to simply move this until I feel like I'm getting the best texture. So I think at around 24 I have the best texture from this image. So I'm going to apply the effect onto the rest of the image. Remember, this is more of fine-tuning the image even more, because while using the mixer brush tool, there are some areas we may accidentally have left out when we are trying to blend the skin of the subjects or the models. So you can see the way I'm drawing these shapes is the way light is falling on particular areas. So right click and click on Gaussian blur, and if at all you feel like the effect is too much on a particular area, you can simply click shift or press shift command F or shift control F and reduce on the opacity of the effect from that very area. And for purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to leave it at 100%. So right click and click on Gaussian blur. Then I'm going to come to this kind of shadow right here, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to zoom in like that. I'm going to apply the effect right there. So basically this step is more, or it basically helps me to further fine-tune the image after using the mixer brush tool. So I think this looks nice and beautiful. So look at the before and the after, before after. We still have the original textures in this image. So I would love to remove maybe the blemishes that I may have forgotten or left out. So select the high frequency layer and get the spot healing brush tool. I'm not going to check or select sample layers because I only want to work on the high frequency layer that is containing the textures. I'm going to just click over the blemishes to eliminate or get rid of them from this beautiful image. So, and when I'm done, I'm going to be doing the dodging and burning to this image to bring back or add dimension or shape to it. I think I'm done with that. So I'm going to close this, and for the dodge and burn option, we're going to be using the color range option. So I'm going to come to the curves adjustment layer, then come to select, and I'm going to come to color range. And when you select color range, look for, remember dodging and burning is enhancing the highlights and the shadows to add or contour the image or to add shape or dimension. So I'm going to select the highlights, and for this case I think that is okay. And always make sure you're on quick mask and click OK. And remember, we are enhancing the highlights. So I'm going to make a midpoint. I'm going to increase on the highlights like that, and after doing so, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to name this dodge. I'm going to do the same for the burning. Come to the curves and come back to select color range, and I'm going to come to the shadows in the image. I think this is the shadow range. I'm going to play around with the fuzziness, and after doing so, I'm going to make a midpoint too, and this time I'm playing with the shadows. I'm going to darken like that. I'm going to do it slightly so you can see this is the burn. Remember, burning is for shadows and dodging is for highlights. So before after, the image has now shape or dimension added onto it. So if at all you feel it is affecting colors, change the blending mode from normal to luminosity, and you can as well come to the dodge and do the same and change it to luminosity. So I'm going to put these two in a group, Control or Command G, and I'm going to name that D and B for dodging and burning. So you can see the before and after for dodging and burning. And well, if you feel it is too much, you can reduce on the opacity of the overall folder for the dodging and burning. So I'm going to go with 70% for the dodging and burning. So I want to do some little bit more of color grading this image. I'm going to come to selective color and come under the blacks, and I'm going to intensify on the blacks like that, and I'm going to come to the yellows, and I'm going to just briefly, you can see if at all you take it all the way up, it won't be giving you the nice results. Then I'm going to come back to selective color, and I'm going to reduce on the amount of yellows from this image because it really looks warm or too warm. I think that is fine. So we're going to take the image into the camera raw filter for further color grading and eye and teeth whitening. So let's create a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard or Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard. And we are going to duplicate that by hitting Control J. Come to filter and come to the camera raw filter, and it is going to open our camera raw filter. So we're going to come all the way down to the calibration, and we're going to reduce on the saturation of the reds slightly, and you're going to come to the green primary and also reduce on the saturation to around negative. You're going to go with around negative 10. I think that is fine, and let's see what the blue primary has in store for us. I think I do love this, and I'm going to just take it to around negative 10 too. So I think that is all, and I'm going to come to the eyes and zoom in, come and get our adjustment brush tool, and I'm going to remember we have some yellows in the eyes, so go with the opposite of yellows in the temperatures, and I also go to opposite of green since we have some green in the white area of the eye, and increase on the highlights to around 3 and the whites to around 3. And after doing so, come the saturation, and remember we are removing color from the white area of the eye. Take it all the way down to around negative 64, and zoom in by holding down Ctrl or Command plus, and start painting only and only on what should be white in the eye. So we're just painting over what should be white in the white area of the eye. So you can simply hold down the space bar and click to move or drag, and also whiten the second eye like that. So I hope you're seeing the magic of the adjustment brush tool, and it is a really powerful tool in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit Command minus to see the eyes, and I'm going to come to the teeth and also do some whitening of the teeth. So when you're doing the teeth, always make sure you paint an individual tooth at a time to do the whitening, because you don't want also whiten or desaturate the gums. So that's why you have to be careful when trying to do the teeth whitening. Basically, you don't have to do this in a rush, so just take your time while doing the teeth and eye whitening basically. And I think we are done with the teeth whitening. So I'm going to simply open this image back into Photoshop, and you can see the before and after, before after. But I feel like sorry about that, I feel like the image is too warm for my liking. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to the photo filter, and I'm going to cool down the image slightly. Under a cooling filter, come and just cool down the image like that. I think this is fine, and after that I'm going to come back to my selective color and add a little bit of blacks to the image to around 1, and I'm going to move this to around -4 again. Then come under the yellows, and I'm going to reduce on the magentas in the yellows. I think we are good to go. So this is a before after, and I want to show you guys the overall for the skin retouching and color grading of this very image. So this is the image initially, before and after, before after. And if at all you have liked this tutorial, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you're watching from this channel for the very first time, I'm Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in yet more tutorials on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.